Well, hello there and welcome to Best of Both Worlds. We're working on an antique quilt today, so stay tuned. Thanks for joining me today. The quilt that I'm working on is a double wedding ring. It's an antique quilt. It was a customer quilt, and I apparently am the only one who was brave enough to take this one on. So I thought, wow, this has a lot of fullness in it, and you can see that in this picture right here. And yet we worked magic, and I want to show you how to do that so that you won't be afraid of quilts that maybe are not perfect, have a little extra fullness. We really can handle a lot of that. So let's get started. This double wedding ring is hand-pieced, a lot of feed sacks and some old fabrics. Some of them are in rather ill repair, but this customer really wants this quilted because it is a precious heirloom in their family. And I am excited to do it. It's probably the most fullness I have ever seen in a quilt of any kind. But double wedding rings tend to have a little bit of fullness anyway. Any way that I flatten it out, like if I flattened it out for this particular ring, would make even more fullness in the next area over. And there's just some parts that no matter what I do, I'm just pushing the fullness somewhere else. You can see there's just like, you could put like a balloon under here. So I want to show you how I'm going to handle that. I'm down at the bottom of the quilt now, and what I have done on every single row has I sighted down the end of the machine, down from the side of the machine, to make sure that I am lined up, that no matter what I do, I'm not going to distort the lines of the quilt, and so that I can keep each of the rings in their place. And then I will deal with the extra fullness as best I can as I get to that part. So I want to show you what I'm doing. I am doing a serpentine line, and I will demonstrate that, of course, because these are so delicately pieced, hand-pieced. I don't want to stitch in the ditch, and I don't want to put a design over it. I want to do a serpentine line in there to draw the fullness in, but also secure those seams so that they can be stable. Okay, on this first, this part right here, you can see there are even tucks in the fabric. Not much you can do about the piecing. And you know, if I pull this down really flat, then I will really distort this area even more than it is. So there will be extra fullness in this little part here, and I'll show you how I'm going to handle that. So first of all, I want to show you the serpentine line. So I'm starting here, and I will come across. I'll slow that down with the regulated. And I just do over like this, just sort of a very, not really a sharp zigzag, kind of a curvy zigzag, like this, over each of those seams. Now you realize you are doing this on your machine. You are not, it's not what the machine is doing. You're just moving it back and forth. And you will get really pretty good at making those really even. It'll be amazing to you. I'll finish this one, and then I want to show you what I'm doing in that little area, elliptical area. Okay, I don't know if you can see it as well, but there is a lot of extra fullness in this area, and this is stabilized on both sides. So I have sort of a little balloon thing up here. But what I'm going to do, I've chosen to do quite a bit of quilting in this area to draw that in and to fold it down. And I'm going to fold it right over on top of that top area. And then I will do a freehand feather in here with a little thread painting in it, actually. I'm starting with a teardrop like that and coming back clear over to the edge, because remember, this edge is actually going over on top of the pieced area. So this is the stacked feather. So I come around like this, around the top like that, and then form another feather here. And around the top like that, and then another feather. Now as I come back, I'm putting stems in here, right along that edge. And I am sewing in constant, but you can do this in regulated or whatever you want. I'm sure this is digitized as well if you're doing this on a computerized machine. And that is just completely nailed down so beautifully. Look at that. Even though there is extra fullness in these little things, they're kind of poofy. And I'm using the Hobbs Heirloom 80/20 on this particular quilt just because it gives it that nice older look. I really like that. Here's another vertical elliptical shape here. And you can see there is just so much fullness in there. So what I'm going to do is fold that over like that, kind of finger press it a little bit. There we go. So I start with a teardrop like this, and then come around, and I have to make sure that I catch the very edge of that with the tip of my feather, like that. Okay, now remember what I am doing. I have all this fullness, and I am literally pushing it over onto the piecing like that, and then nailing down that side with the points of my feathers. So here we go again. Around. It just kind of lays there like it knows what it's supposed to do. And then as I come back, this thread painting, these stems that I'm putting in the feathers, are helpful because they draw in again some more fullness. This is a beautiful little feather. There we go. This area has just a ton of extra fullness in it. And of course that's created because we've tried to keep everything lined up and make everything flat. But I'm thinking that we can probably take, before we put our design in there, in an area that is especially full, like this one is, I have my machine on basting, and it's just 3/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to run a basting line across it, trying to see that I get no tucks in here. And then back across like this. Now it does help if you do not have your plate on underneath, because then you can push on both sides of this as you go. And this is my basting feature of my machine. I'm not doing this one finger at a time. I am doing it with my basting stitch. That way I can really control it. There we go. Now I think that might really help as I put my design in. I'll be able to also manipulate it by pushing down as I'm doing my design. And I'm going to use my computerized machine to put a beautiful design in here, and I will choose one that's got a little bit more quilting in it so that it will gather up, because we know the quilt shrinks as we quilt it. So the heavier design that I can do in there, the more I can draw all of that in. This is by far the worst block that I have on this quilt as far as the extra fullness in it, and you saw how I basted it. The reason that I basted it was because that way I can even out the extra fullness, you know, the gathers. I can move them around through the basting. So I think that's going to really help me. The other thing is I have this quilt on really quite tight now, both directions. This way and then really tight with my clamps. I could not do that before because it is a hand piece quilt, and until it is completely stabilized, I could not make it that tight. So each one of these I have found is very different as I go around them. So I want to show you how I'm going to go around it. I'm just going into my draw boundary. And you can hear that little click as it goes around. And I'm using my light right on that seam. I can make as many points as I want to make it nice and curved. What I want is the actual boundary up on the screen, so I know exactly where this is on the quilt, and I'm going to put the pattern in. The pattern that I have chosen is a really cute little cherry blossom and cherry pattern, and I chose it because it has a lot of quilting in it, fills the entire block in, and it really goes up into the corners. It's one of my patterns. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the screen. This is the last one I did on the row above, and this is the boundary that I just went around. So I'm going to take my pattern here. Let's see, I have to close my drawing here. I'm going to take my pattern and I'm going to move it over here, and then I will delete this boundary. Now we can move this over and make it bigger. And every single time I've done this, you can see how it's going outside of the boundary here, and every single one of them is so different. So I can just put my handles on like that, and I'm going to come in on the side and kind of bring it down a little bit like that. And the same thing up here at the top, it's way over there. So now I'm working with it using mostly I use my gray handles because they help me distort it, because it really has to be distorted to fit in here. There's just no other way to do it. So let's bring that over there, and now I can check all along and make sure I'm not going to be going outside of my boundaries anywhere. And then I think I am ready now to go ahead. I'll bring this out just a teeny bit. There we go. Ready to go ahead and start quilting. Just slowing it down a little bit so that I can work with the fullness. And I have saved some of the fuller blocks for the end. As I've watched it perform on the other blocks, I kind of know where it's going. And those you could do a lot faster. I've also timed this, and the pattern itself takes about 4 minutes to stitch out. But from the time I do one until I do the boundaries on the next one, it's taking me 6.5 minutes a block. I used to always time things because then I can times how many blocks there are, and I know exactly when I'll be finished with my project. You see, I can move this fullness around, and you can put pressure on your quilt as well. Of course, you have to be careful when you're doing that so that you don't get long stitches in a certain place. see if I can get some more of that fullness over there. Then I can just take my basting out when I'm finished. Those were 3/4 inch basting. And I think this is the only block that I really need to have that basting. The rest of them I'm pretty well handled with the pressure on the quilt. And I know that a lot of computerized quilters do really tend their quilt just like this. There we go. Oh, look at that. It's just taking that all up. Very nice. Has a little center in that cherry blossom that it's doing right now. This is almost gathered along the bottom. It's got so much fullness in it. Kind of fun when you have such a challenge, actually. It's been really a fun quilt to do. See if I can not get a tuck here. It's doing pretty well. This bottom part was my main concern, and I think it's really done a beautiful job on it. That's those little cherries. So cute. Just about home free. I really do think we can quilt out everything now. Everybody thinks we can, so I mean, that was a lot of fullness in that block. And I've just done so many double wedding rings. I've never had one this distorted. And I don't know who pieced this, but bless her heart, bet she just would be so thrilled to see how beautiful it's going to turn out. And you see it also puts a cherry blossom in the middle, so that brings all, it's just gathering all of this fullness up in the pattern. Oh, awesome. This makes you feel so good. And then I can just cut that basting out. That's going to be easy. Perfect pattern for this sweet little antique quilt. Okay, that was my cherry blossom pattern, and it's 2232 is the number of it. And I took the basting out, and it looks fantastic. There isn't one tuck that got stitched down. So that was a really awesome technique to use for extra fullness, and it was a lot of fullness. In these 4 squares, I just feel like there needs to be a design in here because every single one of these has some solid fabrics, and so I'm going to just put, it's just a triple teardrop. Just like that. Two, 3, and that's it. I will finish this quilt and then we'll hang it up. I'm really excited about it. Having the freedom to work with the fabric and you know, when you're stabilizing and using your constant or your regulated mode is fabulous. And then being able to manipulate the fabric while the machine is stitching using the computerized part, this is just an incredible vehicle we have to do these quilts. And I'm grateful to have all of this technology. Thank you so much for watching. I'm very, very pleased the way the quilt turned out. I couldn't be more pleased. And I'm excited to show you how. When my customer came to pick this quilt up, she literally was jumping up and down because she ironed this quilt and tried to iron out some of that fullness. You know that's not going to work. And so she knew what I had to deal with, and we had talked about that. But I am telling you, she was so excited that I can't, it's like the most excited I've ever seen a customer, and it just made my heart reel too. These antique quilts are absolutely precious, and they deserve to be quilted. Don't shy away from them. You can do them, and it's a great challenge, and it will help you in all of your quilting. Good luck and have fun.